What's up, guys? Back with another video today. This is going to be a little different than what I've typically done in the past, though. Typically, it's been a lot of card opening videos on this channel. I'm moving away from that a little bit more. I'll still put out a couple occasionally because I am addicted to ripping packs. I love doing that and such, but it's just kind of not a cheap hobby to get into and mass produce content for. So in order to put stuff out more regularly and get my skills up in terms of video content production and most importantly, getting comfortable in front of a camera, trying to cut out the uhs and being more fluid, being more comfortable, and just getting more reps in. So I'm trying to emulate the styles of Dom 2K, Rusty Buckets, Legend of Winning, those sorts of guys, and do some NBA commentary of such. I have all the knowledge up here. I'm trying to get comfortable in front of a camera so that I can kind of bring those two together and be like those guys that I had mentioned. So, in doing so, I have several Giannis trades that I've cooked up for this summer. He is going to be the number one ticket guy on the market this summer. Dame tore his Achilles, and if Giannis is true about wanting to compete, wanting to win more titles and such, it's almost impossible to expect that in Milwaukee moving forward. So several trades I have cooked up here. The first one is talked about quite a bit lately with the Spurs landing the second pick. So I have Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, Stephon Castle. The Spurs got the second and 14th picks for Giannis. So you can maybe throw in another pick or two if 2 and 14 isn't enough for you. This is supposed to be a fairly loaded draft class. But guys like Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes are solid vets. They're more or less there to kind of fill out the salary. Stephon Castle was just Rookie of the Year. It kind of hurts to move off of a Rookie of the Year. But when you're getting a guy like Giannis, plus Wemby's development already in the league, you're looking at more of a win-now situation rather than wanting to hoard the prospects and the potential of these younger guys. A good example of this would have been like Atlanta, where they made a Eastern Conference Finals push very early in Trey's career, and they just sputtered because they didn't have that extra talent besides Trey. So the Spurs have already gone out and got De'Aaron Fox. If they go out and get Giannis and Wemby, that's a certified big three. You don't see big threes too often anymore that are successful, but it would be hard to imagine that one not being so. For the Bucks, though, getting back Stephon Castle, and then you can pair that second pick, maybe get a guy like, obviously Cooper Flag is going to be number one, but there's guys like VJ Edgecombe, I believe, Dylan Harper. I forget the name of the other guy. I'm not a big college basketball guy. I usually know a few of the names, but I just don't have them up here in front of me. So a lot of talent. I think this is a decent haul for the Bucks, and you're going to be able to hit the ground running really quick on a rebuild here. So maybe you want to squeeze out another pick, another youngish guy, maybe Jeremy Sohan or something if you value him like that. But I think this is a good framework for starting the discussion at least. And the only thing that concerns me with this, as I had said, you're moving into a win now position. And that's certainly what you should prioritize. If you look down the road 7-8 years and Wemby is just coming into his prime, Giannis is going to be in a retirement home practically by that point. So it's definitely win now. Don't worry about the future. You've got two defensive player of the year caliber guys. At least I believe Giannis won that once. Wemby is going to be the favorite for years to come now. So that would be a very well-rounded team that maybe you can expect them to come out of the West every year, unless maybe like the Thunder are your favorite moving forward. But I'm going to move on to this next one now. Pull this up here. The Heat. So this is much weaker than some of these other ones you're going to see, but Miami is always in the market for a superstar. Maybe Pat Riley can wake up. They said he has been falling asleep at the trade deadline and such. I don't know if that's just a joke or something, but maybe he can pull off one more big swing. So I have Giannis and then Tyler Smith to make the salaries work, going to the Bucks or going to Miami, and then the Bucks getting Bam Adebayo, Kyle Anderson, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Jovic, and then I got 3 first rounders, 2027, 2030, and 2031. So I think if Miami gets this, they obviously still have a lot of work to do. Tyler Hero as your number 2 on a championship expecting team with Giannis, I don't feel comfortable with that as much as I'm a Tyler Hero guy. And you just moved a decent chunk of all your assets. You still have some expirings in Terry Rozier and Andrew Wiggins that can almost maybe match a max contract, but you're going to need to bring in another, if you want to go the big 3 route, or just bring in a lot more supplemental guys of sorts, maybe. If you're the Bucks, you're getting back Bam is kind of the biggest name here. He can emulate and kind of replace a lot of the defensive stuff Giannis used to do. He's always not in contention for Defensive Player of the Year. He's never really come close to winning it, but he's always a defensive guy. So if you want to at least not completely bottom out defensively, maybe, because you don't have your picks if you're Milwaukee. Those go to Portland, go Blazers. They might take a swing on something like this if they value the defensive impact of Bam, while also thinking Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic can be something. I don't really see them being much of anything. I think they kind of popped as young guys as they are now, and Jovic is a kind of an older young guy. Kyle Anderson is just there to make the salaries work, and maybe if you're the Bucks, you think they're going to bottom out very quickly. This team's going to just fall apart by the end of the decade, and you're going to get a few decent first rounders there. I don't see that happening. I at least don't see them making this trade to the Heat. There's much better value out there somewhere else, like this next team we got here, the Grizzlies. So Memphis is a team that feels like it's really in turmoil right now. They got swept in the first round. They fired their coach shortly before the postseason, and they have to pay Jaren Jackson Jr. this summer. Ja Morant is just a massive question mark these days, whether he's going to be injured and he's staying on the court, or if his off-the-court antics are going to get him suspended. Leadership in terms of that stuff, it's just not great with Ja as your number 1 guy. Maybe it's Ja that gets moved here instead of Jaren Jackson Jr., but this is the framework of a possible Memphis trade I have. I don't see a lot of people talking about Memphis, so I wanted to throw one of these in here. I do think they're going to be players for maybe like a Kevin Durant or Booker, somebody. It feels like they're going to take a swing here. So I got Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, Gigi Jackson as kind of the young guy with potential upside, and then 3 first rounders and a second. So I believe that putting only the 3 first rounders in there and then a second on top of that means that would be all of their firsts. I tried to load up as many firsts as I can for a guy like Giannis in these trades. If you're the Grizzlies, this match of Giannis and Ja is a little clunky. They're not great spacers. Yeah, you'd have Luke Kennard and Desmond Bane out there as your spacers, but especially with like if you're keeping Zach Edey around in this scenario, it becomes a little packed in the paint since they're all kind of slashers. So the fit would be strange. It would be even stranger if you kept Jaren Jackson around because they're literally the same position. So the fit is a little clunky, but the talent is there. So if I'm Memphis and I can move off of having to pay Jaren this summer, if he makes an All-NBA team, I think is what the stipulation we're waiting on to see here. Any day these All-NBA teams are going to come out now. We're almost to the finals. But if you get Giannis in Memphis, pair with Ja, you just make the talent work and you ask questions later. If you're the Bucks, as I had mentioned with Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson Jr. can kind of emulate a lot of what you're going to lose defensively with Giannis if you don't want to be terrible. He has won a Defensive Player of the Year recently. And then Brandon Clark is just there to fill out the salaries. Gigi Jackson is kind of a young potential upside guy. This last season, he got kind of lost in the mix with the team being more competitive, and I believe he was injured like the first half of the year. But the second half of his rookie season, he popped. I believe he had like a career-high 40-something to close the season. So he showed a lot of potential upside, and he just hasn't gotten that much opportunity in his second year in Memphis with them being competitive. If you take a swing on a guy like that in Milwaukee, where there's just not as many guys with the ball going around, maybe he does turn into a star down the road here. So that can be decent value. I think it is a lot better than the Memphis trade, even with the picks there. So moving on to the next one. So the screenshot here says trade currently fails. It's over a matter of like $10,000-$20,000, I think. When I wrote this up, they'll figure that out if they want to do this. The Nets are constantly talked about as a potential landing spot. It's kind of a weird one, though, because they're not competitive at all right now. They did not get a good first-round pick. So, well, they didn't get a good lottery pick, rather. They didn't land Cooper Flagg was their main goal here. What I would have wanted to see them do is just build around Cooper Flagg. But I think it was like the 7th, 8th pick. So maybe you can include that pick now. This was written up since then, but I got Giannis and Pat Connaughton going to Brooklyn for Claxton, Cam Johnson, Tyrese Martin, and then 4 firsts, one of which is New York, 2 of which are New York picks, and then Brooklyn picks, one of which is a Milwaukee right to swap, so I believe they'd be getting their pick back. It's kind of a weird one with Brooklyn, though, because, like I said, they're not competitive. They have all the cap room you could ever ask for. So the expectation would be kind of like with Miami, that they go out and they bring somebody else in on top of Giannis, and they go this big 3 route, and they just try to kickstart a big 3 with whoever else is out there. Maybe, I don't know the free agent list this summer too well, but we've seen the Nets do this with guys like Kevin Durant, Kyrie, James Harden, and then even further back, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Darren Williams, Brook Lopez, that era of guys, and it just never really seems to work for Brooklyn for whatever multitude of reasons. So I know they didn't get the first pick. So maybe it's more reasonable for them to go this route. It's always reasonable to go this route if you can land Giannis, let's be honest. But I always want to see the Nets try and organically build rather than taking a big swing on a star. The stars are always going to be there in free agency because you are Brooklyn, you're New York, you're a big market. So I'm leaning towards saying no if I'm the Nets on jumping into this sweepstakes if the price is too high. You would have to load up a trade with a lot of picks rather than the talent you have because you don't really have a star young guy to offer. The best you got here is Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, or what is the other Cam? They got 2 Cams on there. I'm spacing. But at the moment, this is a little weaker trade unless you just simply value a haul of draft picks if you're the Bucks. So moving on to this next one here. There's a big caveat with this Thunder one. So everybody has been talking about the Thunder being a potential landing spot. I'm kind of shaky on that now that seeing they're up, I believe it was 2-0 in the Western Finals. If they get to the finals, I don't see them doing this trade. Maybe if they get just smacked in the finals, I don't see that happening from either one of New York or Indiana. But if they get embarrassed in the finals, they feel they don't have enough, or they just don't trust the weakest link of their big three with Chet, J-Dub, and Shea, maybe they take a swing on Giannis. It would be terrifying for the rest of the league. So I got in this trade, and J-Dub can be flipped with Chet. We'll go over that. Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, Nikola Topic, J-Dub, 4 first-rounders, a Clippers, Denver, and then 2 OKC picks for Giannis and then Tyler Smith. So J-Dub has been kind of up and down in the playoffs. He's had some lows. He's had decent highs. Still such a young guy. I think this is 3rd or 4th season. All these guys on OKC are super young. So that's another reason why I don't want to see them do this. I want to see them have time to really mature together. But if you're going to pull a trigger on a trade like this, some people might throw Chet in there instead of J-Dub. I don't want to see Chet moved at all. If you can pair Chet with Giannis defensively, that paint is just on lock. Nobody is scoring consistently at the rim. And then you have Shea and Dort and the other guys on the wings. They're already, I believe, something like adjusted for modern times, the best defense in league history. I might have to check myself on that. But Could you imagine Giannis defensively with this rotation, and then offensively just rim running, or Shea setting him up, Chet there just cleaning up if he becomes the cleanup guy in this scenario? There's so many different ways you could take this, and it might be a little reactionary hot take to say it might be better than the Golden State Warriors in their prime with the KD group. Um, we still have to see them win a title first and foremost before I would ever really commit to saying that. But I could see that. If you're the Bucks, getting back Hartenstein and Caruso, just solid vets that are really just filling out the contract salaries here. You can easily flip them for a first rounder each, unless you're Chicago. I don't know why Chicago didn't get a first rounder for Caruso, but those two guys could be decent pieces if you can kickstart a competitive rebuild fairly quick, or you can just flip them for more picks. Topic is a big question mark here. He's not played at all in his rookie year, so he's really just another draft pick if you think about it. But with all that being said, I think I'm going to move on to this last, I believe it was my last trade here. Yes, so this is the one I want to see happen the most, maybe. The Hawks have been just sputtering for 3-4 years now. Whenever they made that Eastern Finals run, they have just been coming up short lately. And bringing in Giannis to pair with Trey would just be perfect. I know it's really similar to what we thought Dame and Giannis would be, but Dame had always had to be more of a score first guy and kind of backpack the Portland team in terms of scoring, so he wasn't as much of a pass first guy. Trey, while still being a big scoring guy, has a bit more passing willingness with a guy like Giannis. So the rim running, the pick and roll game would absolutely be there. For the Bucks, in return, I have them getting Okongwu, Risache, Terrence Mann, Niang, and then 4 firsts. I believe the Hawks still have more picks if they want to. If you can do this trade without having to include Jalen Johnson, it's a massive home run, but he might have to be included. He's their best young asset right now. I believe he missed like the last third of the season injured, but he is one of those guys where if he gets more of an opportunity in a place like Milwaukee with less mouths to feed, he could absolutely pop into being an all-star caliber guy. So if you value getting the first rounders, getting a guy like Okongwu who maybe just needs a change of scenery. Risache was the first pick, and the last half of the season, it feels like people kind of wrote him off. He showed he can, I don't know if star upside is still a big question mark. I don't know if I ever see that, but he can be a very key piece to a competitive championship team down the line. Terrence Mann and George Niang are just kind of there to fill out the salaries and then the picks there. So I just really want to see the Hawks do this because they fired their GM this summer, Landry Fields, which actually shout out to Landry Fields. I got to meet him at Summer League last year. So if they can finally just put a competent piece next to Trey, I think that team, especially if you keep Jalen Wilson around, or not Wilson, I believe he's on the Nets, Jalen Johnson around, you would be able to. Boston has fallen off now. The East is going to be very wide open. That might be the championship favorite if they can build around that group well enough. But I just want to see that one happen for the sake of Trey. He has just been slandered so much over the years for not being a competitive winner when the team around him has just never been great. So I think with those trades today, I'm just going to leave it there. There was one other I had been working at some point that involved the Lakers as a 3-team one with Okongwu going there. They really need a center. That's a conversation, another topic for another video perhaps. But if you guys like the content here, go ahead, drop a like, subscribe. I'm going to try and put out more content here and get more comfortable in front of a camera and kind of find my style. So if you want to be along for the ride on that, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Bye.